They say all good stories start with a quick and easy concept that anyone can grasp, luring the audience in, then slowly escalates, increasing the tension and complexity. But this game skips step 1, starts on hard, ends on harder. What the fuck is going on? Cybernization, endless cycles, distortions, looping, stopping, time, pan possibility calculations, Among Us! This is all in the first hour of the game. But worry not, for I am here to help. For the past few weeks I've been studying just what this game is about, with the very helpful help of the Genosia Reddit. Go check it out. Of course you can probably tell by the length of this video, but beware, I'm going through all the story this game has to offer, ending and true ending. So if you even have the slightest inclination to play this game, go check out my review, and maybe that will convince you. Of course, if you are too stubborn in your ways, or just don't own a Switch or a PlayStation Vita, but I mean, who doesn't? Fear not, my good friend, as this video will be understandable both to those who have played this game, as well as those who have heard about it for the first time as they clicked on this video. Now this will be long enough as it is, so let's get right into it. Now if one wishes to understand the plot of Genosia, they must first understand Genosia, like the guys, not the game, as well as the basic function of the silver key. In this universe there is something called cybernization and recalculation. This is the process of which someone becomes completely digital, leaving their physical form behind, but becoming immortal inside of a machine or android. To do this, people go to the Star House and have their information sent to a mysterious ship called Hoshibun, far away from any civilization. At Hoshibun, there are several cybernization engineers, the only ones in the entire universe. Also known as Shrine Maidens, these people are essentially prisoners, forced to cybernize people for the rest of their lives. Now this sounds great, for those cybernized at least, so why hasn't everyone done it yet? It's expensive. Most people can only afford the first part, cybernization, becoming digital, unable to think new thoughts, merely preserving their consciousness. Very few can afford recalculation, where they would be put inside a freely controlled robot, able to think independently. Those unable to pay for recalculation are sent to a place named Genos, where all the mind's information are stored, kinda like the cloud, accessible to other people from anywhere, but all stored in the same place. Eventually something went wrong. While it's unclear how exactly this happened, the minds being stored in Genos eventually became interconnected with each other, creating the entity of Genos, a hive mind of all the people cybernized. This entity genuinely thinks that people are better off inside of its hive mind than being individuals, so it sends out Genosia across the universe to connect more people with itself. These Genosia look exactly like real people, and can easily blend in with a crowd. Now, it isn't exactly clear how connected the Genosia are to Genos. Everyone still mostly acts like themselves while Genosia, with the only difference being slight changes they can hide to appear human, mostly just the will to send everyone to Genos. But occasionally some more animalistic tendencies are let out. For being a part of a hive mind, they do seem relatively independent. They could just be acting like themselves to fool everyone, but there are times where we'll see them question their own ideals. They're also not immune to mistakes or slip-ups, with Shigemechi completely revealing that he's Genosia by mistake. This leads me to believe that the Genosia are forced to leave the hive mind of Genos when out connecting more people to it. This is further proven by Genosia often saying not only that they save other people by connecting them to Genos, but also how they sacrifice their own well-being by doing it, as they must leave the hive mind, which is hell for them. The other crucial understanding point is the silver key. First off, for them to work we have to throw all problems caused by time travel and paradoxes out the window, because this gets messy. Originally owned by Rakio, it's a somewhat living organism that feeds off information. It does this by attaching to humans and looping them through parallel universes, adding chaos to them so it's more likely to get more interesting information. These parallel universes will often have the same major events happen consistently, with slight changes to them. For example, in every parallel universe there will be a crew of people leaving Liu An to escape from Genosia, but the crew of people won't stay consistent, and if one of them is infected by Genosia, that person will change each round. Once activated by the keywords "Don't Doubt," "Don't Be Afraid," and "No," knowledge will save all. It will attach to its host, trapping them in endless loops until it's full of its desired information. Then it will search for better feeding grounds, unattaching from its host and opening a door to a new universe, which not only the key can go through, but another person, who must close the door behind them. There are 15 characters in total, but only a few of them will be relevant to this story. Setsu, the other person with an activated key who loops just like the player, but at different times. So the Setsu you meet on your 3rd loop could be her on her 50th, but during your 4th loop it could be her first. This of course is a paradox. For example, if you taught Setsu something on her 50th loop, then again on one of your later loops, when she's on her 15th, she should already have known what you taught her on her 50th loop. But of course, as I mentioned earlier, we have to ignore said paradoxes. There's Jonas, a man who was one of space's first explorers, conquering man's final frontier, and is now officially recognized as insane. But more importantly, he bought 2 identical dolls during his youth, one of which being the miracle doll, Kukrushka, who despite being only a doll, somehow has a full personality. Next there's SQ, a deceitful girl who is Genosia in the first round. Remember this. Then we have Rakio, the original owner of the Silver Key. And finally Yuriko, an escaped shrine maiden who performs synchronization on countless people. With all that out of the way, we can finally start explaining the entire plot of Genosia, true ending and all. A girl asks if you understand what she just said. This is Setsu. She's just woken you up from a medical pod, and quickly ushers you over to a discussion room. You and a crew of people are escaping from Liu An, a planet overrun by Genosia. After finding out that you have amnesia, she tells you that a few people on the ship are infected by Genosia, but it's unclear who, and each night they make a single person disappear through unknown means. So you all agree to vote people into cold sleep, which Genosia can't survive. At the end of the round, Setsu gives you a key, saying "Don't doubt, don't be afraid, and no, knowledge will save all," activating the key and attaching it to you, before fading out. So, the question is, why does she have a key to give you? And how does she get one herself? And don't worry, I will go into that, but for now we'll just put it up here and remember it happened. Right now, we just need to keep going. The next few loops are relatively normal, with new people appearing on the ship, the most notable of which being Yuriko, who immediately accuses you. But nobody else agrees with her and her points are quickly dismissed. After the vote is finished, she brings you to the viewing lounge and asks why you haven't been accused by anyone, but it's a rhetorical question. She says everyone's awareness of your existence has been distorted by the insane gods themselves. She then corrects this distortion by touching you, making you accusable and susceptible to Genosia attacks. Now we're going to keep moving, as we haven't learned enough relevant information to dissect this part yet, but this is another important moment that's key to remember, and I'll give you another hint. As you may have guessed, Yuriko's status as a former shrine maiden is very relevant, but for now we'll just have to leave it up here and get back to it later. Remember this moment. Now you continue looping, even becoming Genosia yourself, all while leveling up stats in charisma, intuition, logic, charm, performance, and stealth. You'll also find out that not only will certain people come Genosia, but there are also several other special roles. The AG follower, standing for anti-cosmic, someone who is in a sort of cult. They choose to worship Genos, believing that this universe is insane, and everyone would be better off going to Genos so they could travel to the true universe, while disavowing the laws of humanity and physics. How does that even work? Well, anyway. For context, they're about as smart as someone who actually believes that the Earth is round. Next, the engineer, capable of investigating a single person each night to determine whether they are human or not, with the help of on-ship equipment. We have the doctor, who can see if the person voted out the previous round was Genosia. Then the guardian angel, who can protect a single person each night by, delaying the time of warp using very specific warp-related credentials to use the fact that the ship uses pan-possibility calculations while warping to block Janosia from attacking. Yes, that'll be on the test. Occasionally, there will also be guards, 2 people who never left the ship while docked at Liu An, so are guaranteed not to be infected. And finally, the bug, who disintegrates the entire universe if left alive for too long, caused by a system error. What's that supposed to mean? Setsu hypothesizes that they are some sort of cosmic mistake, something not meant to exist in this universe at all, kinda like Furbies. They're immune to Genosia attacks, as Genosia cannot attack what does not exist, but instantly die if investigated by the engineer, as being examined causes inconsistencies to occur, erasing them. Which is interesting game logic to say the least. Now there is more to understanding them, but for now we can only add it to the list. Eventually, you and Setsu get together and exchange information with your keys. It brings up a list of information about characters that will unlock as you learn more about them. The keys are very on board with this exchange, as gaining information is their raison d'être, but also because they are very compatible with each other. Well, that might actually be a bit of an understatement. They are in fact the same key. Now hold on a minute, how does that make sense? And I hate to do this again, I really do. But we have to explore more of the game before explaining how this came to be. But for now, just remember, there is only one key that somehow both you and Setsu have and use to loop. After that round, you're about to start your next loop when the key's functions are restored, letting you pick how many crewmates there are, what roles will be available, and what role you will play. There is no clear-cut answer to why this happens. The only theory I could come up with is that after gaining enough information, the key starts to trust its host to pick interesting loops, so it leaves the choice to them. Regardless, it's not too important. So, you and Setsu keep looping, learning more and more things as your keys fill up with information. Obviously I won't go over everything, as we would be here for hours, but these are the crucial things that are learnt through talking with crew members through loops, that can happen in various orders for each playthrough. We find out that SQ was raised inside of an incubation pod, and only emerged about 1 year ago, so her mother, Manan, could transfer her conscious into her daughter's body to stay young, having to use her own children for DNA reasons. This wasn't the first time she had done this either. SQ was her 511th spare body. That's what SQ stands for. Manan's first child was AA, then AB, and so on until SQ, where something went wrong and the transfer was only semi-successful. Both of their minds fought for control inside of this body, with SQ having more control in universes where she isn't Genosia, and Manan having more when Genosia. We also find out that Remnan knew Manan before she went into SQ's body. She essentially treated him like a pet, which, I don't know, maybe that's okay, but I'm more of a vanilla guy if you catch my drift. And judging by his Now it's never explained why Manan underwent this process instead of cybernization and recalculation. Chances are she had enough money, seeing as she could do this much more complex process over 500 times. But maybe she just didn't want to give up the sweet, sweet taste of Clorox's concentrated bleach. And honestly, I can't blame her. But unless we get confirmation from the devs, we can only speculate. In one round, we learned that many religious groups see cybernization as heaven, such as Gina's mom, who became cybernized herself. All without knowledge of the storage becoming sentient from all the minds stored within it. In fact, very few people know about Genos at all, which is surprising, as cybernization and Genosia are both very common terms. From this, I deduced that there's a very good chance that either some business or government has tried to cover up Genos as much as possible. However, other than the evidence I just provided, there isn't anything else in the game talking about that. But it would explain why so few people know what Genosia truly are and where they came from, despite everyone knowing about cybernization. This is also the round where we learn of Yuriko's former position as a shrine maiden, forced to cybernize people before she escaped, eventually ending up on this ship. However, if she's ever found by members of the higher echelon, she will be put to death. She also lets us know that if we are ever to be eliminated, we would not reach Genos. After all, the reason Genosia are on the ship is for your sake. If you decide to refrain from revealing your role as either engineer or doctor, and either the Genosia or bug pretend they have it, there's a chance you'll get the weird ending. Everyone, including Rakio, Setsu, and even Levi, the ship's AI, will start talking gibberish. The only one still thinking logically being yourself. Rakio will even multiply before the universe is destroyed. It says that when probability calculations for roles experience abnormalities, the order of the universe can be destroyed, so it must force termination. I wonder what that means. Let's add it to the list. Eventually, you'll learn that Jonas is the owner of the ship you are all riding on, and is officially recognized by the Space Federation as insane. He has unparalleled levels of ignorance to the consequences of his actions. Like when he unleashes a slime mold that devours everyone, giving no explanation. I mean, he might be into that kind of thing, but it's definitely not for me. To each their own. He also cannot wrap his head around artificial intelligence, so we find out that Stella is actually part AI, made by Levi, the ship's AI, to foster smoother communication between him and Jonas. But the most important thing about Jonas isn't actually about him at all. During his youth, he found someone he truly loved, a girl named Arya. However, he lost her, and spent his life determined to look for her. Yeah, he never found her. However, he did find someone selling 2 identical dolls that looked exactly like his long-lost Arya. After buying them, he quickly unwrapped them as delighted as could be. The dolls looked exactly like his precious Arya. He immediately fell in love, but personally I find dolls kinda creepy. But, different strokes for different folks. What the fuck? Then, an even greater miracle occurred. One wasn't only a doll, it, or rather she, had a personality, despite having no voice to speak with. Ecstatic beyond belief at this development, Jonas worshipped this girl, who he dubbed Kukrushka, the miracle doll, and protected her with utmost care, leaving the second, non-conscient body in the storage of his ship. In a later round, Kukrushka comes up with the idea of putting everyone into cold sleep, except the 2 guards, those being her and Remnan, which raises the question, why haven't they done this every round? I mean, it's not that difficult of an idea to come up with, but I digress. Everyone goes through with the plan, and you have the first ever peaceful resolution, with no debates or Genosia attacks. What a nice ending. But wait, Remnan wakes you up with a terrified look on his face. He wants to hide with you, and explains that everyone else has been killed. But before he gets the chance to hide, Kukrushka enters the room, killing you. But we see in the end screen that for whatever reason she spares Remnan. We just have to add it to the list that I will be answering in due time. There's a chance that at the start of a loop you will meet with Setsu, who is feeling down, starting to succumb to the pressure of looping over and over, and falling to the despair of this endless cycle. You can either carry on, going through the loop as usual, or decide to go have some fun. So you two completely ignore the threat of Genosia and decide to go fishing, accidentally catching Otome, the intelligent beluga, in the process. This may seem irrelevant, but it becomes important, so keep this moment in the back of your head. In a later loop, while talking to Rakio, we find out that the key was originally his, but he only has one, so it doesn't explain why both you and Setsu have one. However, he does explain that the silver key desires information, moves through parallel universes, and once full, opens a door to a new universe, where it can be disconnected from its host, ending the loops. If the conditions are right, you'll meet with Rakio and Yuriko, who claims that your distortion is plainly visible, and that you have been the main cause of what's troubling everyone. She then touches Rakio and adjusts him so that he can see what you truly are, or rather were. She explains that this universe has been deceiving everyone for the purpose of coordination. That's why nobody can see this distortion. When Rakio sees you after being touched, he can't believe his eyes, saying that you shouldn't be here. If you and Rakio make it to the end of that round, you two will have a discussion about what he saw. He said that you should already have disappeared, as the crew found out that Genosia were on this ship because you were eliminated, which of course makes little sense, as you're still here, but for whatever reason, the crew has completely forgotten about this, including Rakio until he was touched by Yuriko. He also realizes what the bug is, telling us that something that destroys the universe simply by existing doesn't seem right, and it's not. Because of you being here despite being eliminated, a distortion occurred, creating the bug, meant to destroy this faulty universe. After those words, he reveals that he himself is the bug, and destroys the entire universe. The next loop, you and Setsu discuss Rakio's revelation, and find out that even Levi has no recollection of the first Genosia attack, so there's a good chance Rakio was telling the truth. As we know, the silver key lets the host change the number of Genosia each round, and at some point, the player will think of setting the number of Genosia to 0. Once doing so, you will start the loop a day before you usually do, day 0. You and Setsu find everyone else partying, celebrating their escape from Liu An. Everyone's having a great time, when some people start questioning how you recovered so quickly. Not knowing what people are talking about, you and Setsu visit the medical pod you recovered in. You open it, and inside is another you. As soon as the pod is opened and you and the other you are in the same physical space, the universe is annihilated. Setsu reaches out to you in a sort of limbo, and you discuss what just happened. You two deduce that both yous are real ones, and that's what caused the universe to collapse. You also deduce that this second you has been here every single loop, but has been killed by Genosia first every single time, as the silver key only moved to a universe where this happened, as if it didn't, the universe would be destroyed and it would gain no new information. This is also why there are always Genosia on board, because if there weren't any, there would be 2 of you, and the universe would self-destruct. And the reason you didn't disappear despite being attacked by Genosia is, well, you did, but there's a second you. So that answers one question, but leaves us with another. Why are there 2 of you? You and Setsu agree to continue searching for new information before the universe fades from existence and you start your next loop. After looping back into a new universe, you talk to Setsu about the previous loop. but she has no clue what you're talking about. In fact, she barely even knows who you are. You quickly deduce that this must be Setsu in her very first iteration, before she obtained the silver key and started to loop. You go talk with Rakio, who has his unactivated key, and he teaches you the words to activate it. Don't doubt, don't be afraid, and know, knowledge will save all. But you decide to not give it to Setsu, as if she never got a key, she would never begin to loop. Then she would never give a key to you, solving everyone's problems. After a few rounds, disaster strikes. The ship comes in contact with space debris and the shields break. Everyone runs to the Eva room, but Setsu gets hit by flying debris, suffering a fatal injury. You have no choice but to grab Rakio's key and give it to Setsu, forever trapping her into the loops, but saving her life. You lie next to her and hold her, as the ship slowly breaks around you. Eventually, you'll gain all the information the queue wants and return to the Limbo World, where you discuss with Setsu what to do now that your key is full. You two re-enter the Day Zero loop, where there are no Genosia. Therefore the other you hasn't been attacked yet, and is still in the medical pod. Once again, you two find yourselves in the midst of a party with the rest of the crew, but quickly excuse yourselves to go check on the other you. Setsu comes up with a plan to send you in the medical pod to another universe along with the key, using the interdimensional door it opens now that it's full of information. This way you end your own loop on a ship without Genosia, and avoid the problem of there being two of you in a single universe. However, there's one problem. Setsu hasn't completed a key yet. Not wanting to loop the perfect world you're currently in, she has no choice but to go through the portal as well, binding herself into the loops forever. Her last words thanking you for everything. You return to the party and everyone's having a great time, but they all have one thing in common. They don't know who Setsu is. Wow, that's rough. Setsu gets stuck in an eternal loop going through the same thing over and over and isn't even remembered by her closest friends. Short end of the stick, no doubt. Luckily, there's a true ending. If you go to the main menu and start a new file, this will happen. Everything's the same. Setsu asks if you understand, but this time you have the option to remind her of the time you went fishing with her. She's shocked, and understandably so. From her perspective, she just said a sad farewell to you and entered a new dimension, just to have the second you somehow share a consciousness and know her. Her key unlocks. The last bit of information needed was about you, the fact that you've carried your consciousness from another dimension. She quickly calms down and decides that the two of you will end it here, where she got to see you one last time. Before heading over to the meeting room, you let her know that the last time you experienced this loop, SQ was Genosia, so chances are she is again. After getting everyone on board with voting out SQ, Setsu stops it, as she has a better plan in mind, one that will save everyone. As we learnt earlier, when SQ is Genosia, mentally Manan is in charge, her immortality-obsessed mother who transferred her consciousness into her daughter. Knowing this, Setsu comes up with a plan. Kukrushka may not be on the ship in this parallel universe, but the second doll's body is. So Setsu pulls it out of storage and has Manan put her mind into it, freeing SQ as well as Manan. Now there's one piece left to this puzzle, getting rid of the Genosia. So Manan is forced to go through the interdimensional portal Setsu's completed key creates in a win-win situation. The ship is freed of Genosia, and Manan gets the silver key, which she can use to loop over and over, finally obtaining her wish of immortality without cybernization. Finally having freed yourselves from the loops, you and Setsu lie on the floor, looking up at the sky while the countdown to warp begins, as she thanks you for being there. Well, that's a much better ending. I certainly pity anyone who never realized there was a true ending. Now let's go through our questions and see which ones can be answered. Now it makes sense why Jonas bought a doll that somehow had a personality. It was Manan this whole time. I believe that when she entered the portal in the true ending, she entered an alternate universe far in the past, eventually being bought by Jonas and even later getting back onto the ship. This also explains why she went on a killing spree on guard duty with Remnan. As we know, Manan had something going on with him long ago, and while it's unclear if she was looping at the time of that event, she definitely had a key with her, so she knew there were no consequences to her actions. But other people theorize that this murder spree is actually her first loop, and what really happened was that after walking through the portal, she woke up inside the pod the second doll was being stored in, and immediately went to killing everybody, including the other Kukrushka. But I don't believe that to be true, as then Kukrushka being a miracle doll has no explanation, and truly was just a miracle. Lastly, I've seen many people assume that Kukrushka is Genosia every round, as when she was put into the doll's body, she was in fact infected Manan. They hypothesized that over the years before getting back onto that spaceship, she learned how to hide that fact. While this is what using logic would lead you to believe, the game disproves this with Setsu. The round you give her the silver key, she's on guard duty, yet she is still Genosia on other rounds. So following that logic, it makes sense that Kukrushka could either be Genosia or human, depending on the round. So why are there two of you, and why does Setsu give you a key? As we now know, there are two of you in a single dimension because Setsu brought an extra you into a dimension that already had one of you in it. So that raises the question, why aren't there two Setsus? The first time, it really is just by chance, that in the loop you are transported to, Setsu never made it onto the ship. But once she gives you the key and the round is finished, we get this weird zoom out effect. This is the only time this happens during the entire game, and I believe this signifies that we loop without her, as she completed her key. That would explain why Setsu gives you your past self's key, so you can begin looping and eventually save the next iteration of her by giving her Rakio's key, and also explains why she knows so little about Genos in the preceding loops. Why don't people remember your death? After being touched by Yuriko, it's unclear what exactly Rakio may have seen, but from it, he remembered that the player shouldn't exist, as they were killed by Janosia. But why doesn't anyone remember in the first place? There are two overarching theories for this. 1. That the universe has some amount of agency over itself, trying to correct mistakes by itself to solve problems. That's why everybody knows about the Genosia attack on day 0, as that's what starts the votes, but nobody thinks to try and remember who was attacked, as the universe doesn't want anyone to think about the second you, as it might cause chaos in the universe. This also explains why people forgot about Setsu when she enters the interdimensional door, because if they remembered, they would question their own reality. Then, there would be greater chances that the universe would be annihilated. So, it distorts people's views, as Yuriko puts it. However, the universe still makes mistakes, and accidentally makes the you who just entered this universe, the one you play as, unaccusable, until Yuriko fixes that problem. Now we'll get to the second theory in a few minutes, but right now, why can Yuriko make you accusable, and why can she change people's views? We know Yuriko was a former shrine maiden, but it's unclear what exactly her job was. Obviously helping cybernize people, but as there were many shrine maidens there, maybe some had more specific roles. If this is true, then I suspect that Yuriko had the job of fixing mistakes made during cybernization. She's the one who fixes the distortion and makes you accusable. She can even change your stats, but only when you're the bug, an error in the universe. Even when she touches Rakio, it's to fix an error in his perception. And what role is Rakio when she does this? You guessed it, the bug. Now those last few answers may seem iffy at best, with some speculation here and there, but with these next few questions we have to go full on theory mode. I will lay out all the information I drew to get to these theories, so you will have the information to decide if you agree or disagree. Just what is the weird ending? To even attempt to describe what's going on here, we first have to delve into another theory, one that suggests this entire universe is a simulation. Now nobody is sure what this simulation is for. It could be a test to become cybernized, to enter Genos, or meant to study the silver key. Heck, we aren't even sure if it is one at all, but if it is, that would explain a lot. Bugs make much more sense. Listen to the wording it uses. Due to a system error, you have been configured as a bug. A system error. Bugs destroying computer programs is already a known thing, so it wouldn't be a stretch to assume it could also happen in this simulation. And the universe trying and actually being able to solve problems on its own, for example making people forget about how there's two of the protagonists, also makes much more sense with this theory. It completely explains how Yuriko can adjust people's views. As a former shrine maiden who specialized in cybernization, would know her way around technologies. She also often mentions the insane gods who created this universe, which could be referring to the creators of the simulation, or a meta comment about the game devs. Loops also make much more sense, as they could be easily replicated in a computer program. I won't go through every instance, but there are many more references to errors, malfunctions, and other things of the sort. While there is no conclusive evidence suggesting that this whole thing is a simulation, it also helps explain the weird ending we spoke of. I have no idea why this would happen in a normal universe, but inside of a simulation, everything going crazy could just be another error made somewhere in the code, as we've seen happen so many times already. Rakio even says that calculations must have gone wrong, but to be fair, I don't know if he's exactly in his right of mind as he says this. But the biggest piece of evidence comes right as the universe destroys itself. It reads, "When probability calculations for rolls experience abnormalities, the order of the universe can be destroyed." That's giving off some pretty heavy simulation vibes if you ask me. But one question remains. Why aren't you affected? Throughout this weird ending, the only one who continues thinking clearly through the whole thing is you. You are also the only one who remembers Setsu after she leaves the universe. And we've known for a while that your character is no doubt an oddity. Starting the game with amnesia, almost like he just woke up. I believe that you, the player, insert your consciousness into the body of an already existing person inside this simulation. Why this happens, I can't say for sure, but I do have a theory. When you boot up the game, these loops with Setsu have already been going on for a while, potentially forever, but only 2 loops after you, the player, enter this person's body, you get the true ending, ending the cycles. And the ability that makes this possible? Being able to move your consciousness between universes, or as we know them, save files. An ability that no normal person should have, not even someone with a silver key. I believe that this is indeed a simulation, despite not knowing what it's for. I believe that somehow the people in this simulation got stuck in this loop, continuing the same cycle over and over again, until whoever was monitoring the simulation decided to send you in to fix the situation. With the ability to move your consciousness to different save files, you quickly brought a stop to this endless cycle, allowing the simulation to continue its purpose, whatever that might be. This could be why you weren't accusable at the start of the game as well, to give you an easier time fixing the problem, as Yuriko says that everyone's awareness of you has been distorted by the insane gods themselves. Those being the people monitoring the simulation. This also explains why you aren't affected by the weird ending. You might think it's because you're looping, but Setsu gets all funky on you as well, so it must be because you are not affected by this universe's tampering, as you are not a part of its simulation. Yuriko might have caught on to this, as she often refers to you as an error, or someone who should not be in this universe. But she could be referring to the fact that you should have been eliminated by Genosia. Setsu, on the other hand, is definitely onto you by the true ending, thanking you for being there, for saving her and everyone else from this endless cycle. Well, that was really hard to put together. Thanks for watching though.